Everybody, welcome to the UGA Sports Show, Rumors versus Facts. This is the show where we talk Georgia recruiting. It is where we kind of wade through all the hullabaloo and, well, let's call it what it is. The lies that are on the recruiting trail. There's always a ton of them, and we bring on our recruiting experts to kind of wade through the BS and to tell you what we know for a fact. We're a little late today. We're supposed to start at 8 o'clock, but we've been running down transfer portal rumors. We've been running down issues with the coach, Fran Brown, leaving to go to Syracuse, and whether, what's going on there. He's one of the top recruiters in the nation, according to a lot of places, and he's been very good for Georgia. So Georgia has the number one recruiting class by the skin of its teeth, and he was responsible for a lot of those guys coming in. So our man Jed May and Lance McCurley have been hard at work reaching out to guys that are committed to Georgia, guys who are looking at Georgia, to find out what is the effect of Georgia losing Fran Brown to Syracuse. Now, he's going to be here through Saturday, at least, working. I mean, it's not like he's left today. Mm-hmm. He's still coaching. He was at practice today. He's doing what he's going to do. But there's a lot of big names with him, a lot of guys in the secondary. He's Georgia's secondary coach, although we know that Kirby Smart and Will Muschamp have a big impact on the secondary, but Fran Brown is that guy. So Lance, Jed, tell me what you know. Tell me some reactions. Is Georgia losing everybody? Are they keeping everybody? What the hell's going on?
Well, so Georgia has
just cut off.
Yeah, go ahead, Lance.
Georgia's gonna keep everybody, I would say. Obviously, the biggest concern over on the Vault today and across Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, was Ellis Robinson, but one of the nation's top players, and a defensive back in this class, and he tweeted #GoDogs in a very timely manner. So it just seems on that front that it's gonna be all good, at least with him. With some of the other guys, Jed reached out to Andre Evans. I'll just let you take that.
Yeah, Andre Evans basically said, Fran's a great guy, but I'm locked into Georgia. I'm looking forward to getting down there. Lance, you mentioned Ellis. And the thing about Fran Brown, and I mentioned this in a story I wrote today, how it could affect Georgia recruiting. He had so many connections with prospects in the Northeast at all positions, right? Not just defensive backs. So Jordan Thomas, defensive lineman, he told me, happy for Coach Fran, sad to see him go, but nothing's changed in nothing changed my commitment. We've heard from some sources that Georgia still feels good about Nair Daniels, who's offensive lineman, from New Jersey. The most interesting thing we heard today was we reached out to DeMello Jones, another defensive back commit, and he basically just replied with a no comment. So, it's interesting, and it seems at first glance that that's oh no, what does he mean no comment? He just doesn't want to say he's flipping it. But as people pointed out on the Vault, he's in the playoffs. He's got semifinals on Friday. He's this is a shock to these guys, because DeMello Jones, go back to a year ago, his recruitment hadn't really blown up yet, and Georgia and Fran Brown were one of the first really bigger schools to get in on him. So he's built that relationship really strong over the past year or so. So it's a not a reality check, but it's a moment for a kid to take a step back, kind of refocus, and go from there. But I mean, DeMello Jones isn't a guy who, he hasn't, to my knowledge, really I think he visited Tennessee for a game, maybe.
Yeah.
It's not like he's been at a different school every weekend. So I still believe Georgia holds on to him. Obviously, it's because the thing about it too is it's not like Georgia's short on guys coach defensive backs, right? You got Kirby Smart, you got Will Muschamp. So you're still going to be getting one heck of a education, so to speak, as a defensive back there. So I still believe Georgia holds on to DeMello Jones, but certainly it's going to be interesting to see which names emerge, if anyone is hired before signing day, because signing day is, I think, 3 weeks from tomorrow, maybe. So it's a condensed timeline right now. But if I had to pick today, I think Georgia hangs on to all those, the defensive backs and the the Northeastern connection guys that Fran Brown helped get.
All right, Ellis, had this little note here, said, I got a lot of trust in Kirby Smart, his staff, to make me an overall better player at the position, knowing that he's played DB at Georgia also. Ellis Robinson, when this is his comments on, Fran Brown leaving for Syracuse. So I think it's pretty big, I got a lot of trust in Kirby Smart. So it does not sound like he's going anywhere. I think that's pretty big.
And
Now,
people who say, oh, the Northeast, like who cares? Ellis Robinson is originally from, I want to say from New Jersey, maybe. Like he's from up there. How many Philadelphia guys have come down to Georgia through the years? New Jersey. Marcus Harrison in this class is from upstate New York. Ryan Puglisi is originally from just outside of Boston, now plays in Connecticut. There's some serious talent up there that Fran Brown has helped get. And I think the biggest impact will be identifying guys early, getting in early with those first offers and things like that. Georgia is, Fran Brown didn't recruit DeAndre Swift. Fran Brown didn't recruit a guy like Mark Webb. I don't even think Fran Brown was here yet when Tyke Smith
been there last 2 years.
So Georgia it's not like they're completely shut off from the Northeast, but it's certainly a hit in terms of, again, the relationships that Brown has with all those high school coaches up there. But I think that's going to be the biggest impact is, you see these sophomores and juniors getting offers from Georgia 8 or 9 times out of 10. It's, hey, yeah, Coach Fran reached out. Coach Fran saw my film. So it's that where I think his loss is going to be felt the most.
Yeah, he's a strong recruiter. That's when Georgia sits 3 or 4 offensive starters like they did against Georgia Tech. When you don't have Ladd McConkey out there, you don't have Brock Bowers, you don't have Tate Ratledge, or Ra Thomas, and you still go out and win. You're on a 29-game win streak. This year, even though Georgia's undefeated so far, this has been one of the worst years for injuries. I would be very interested to go quarter by quarter and see how many. I don't even think it's a full game that you had a healthy Brock Bowers and a healthy Ladd McConkey on the field at the same time. It feels very, very minimal. My point is, everyone's like, well, who's the next guy up? And it becomes a cliche, and we get so sick of hearing, well, we got a next man up mentality. Well, of course you do. You got a choice. There is no choice. But the fact that everyone around the country goes, well, every time Georgia gets hurt, they just plug in another 4-star, another 5-star.
Mm-hmm.
Kirby is a elite recruiter, maybe the best in the country. He's a great coach. They always have a good game plan, and a lot of the game plan stuff gets overlooked because you have better players. But a lot of the times when Georgia's able, the reason Georgia has 2 titles and this crazy win streak is because he's had such depth. Other teams get beat up and they just don't have it. So having an elite recruiter, like a Fran Brown on the team, very important, very vital, if you will, to have a guy like that. A good coach as well. And, congrats to him. The guy wasn't even an offensive coordinator, goes straight to head coach. That gives Kirby 5 guys. But I want to get back to DeMello Jones real quick because, Lance, you just went to see him. This kid, yeah. I mean, if you read this story, you're excited about DeMello Jones. Like, man, this kid can do everything. Holy crap.
One of the best athletes I've ever seen in my life. And that's
pretty high praise. So,
yeah, man, he was, Jed saw him play twice this year. I don't know if Jed can back me up, maybe best in his life, but he was all over the field. He was a cornerback. He was a safety. I believe he was punt returner, kick returner. He was their quarterback. He was Swainsboro's quarterback. It was just, and someone asked me on the vault, because I've seen Cam Michael play twice. They were like, who is the better athlete? And I think Cam Michael is probably the better athlete. But I said, right now, DeMello Jones is the better football player. Now, he's still very raw, when he gets to wherever he goes in college, which I think is going to be Georgia. But, he's just seems like very polished for, just a high school kid on the gridiron. Versus Michael's really a track star, just, I feel like still kind of learning. So, Jones is one of the better athletes I have seen in my short lifetime.
And to kind of just to wrap up the whole, defensive backs, Fran Brown angle, Jamil Adai did a great job at Georgia, won recruiter of the year and everything. It went to Miami. Georgia has recruited defensive backs at a pretty high level since then. Fran Brown won recruiter of the year and everything. At the end of the day, defensive back recruits are going to want to come play at Georgia because of Kirby Smart. Like that's an insane pitch to have to these guys is, hey, I was a starting safety in the SEC at a great program. So, and that's not to downplay what Fran Brown did because he did a great job. But at the end of the, like, it's not like Georgia's, defensive back recruiting is all of a sudden going to fall off a cliff because at the end of the day,
that's a great point.
Kirby Smart and Will Muschamp too. I mean, Will Muschamp not to be forgotten in all of this. You've got two SEC starting safeties bringing these guys in. You know, they didn't play corner, but that pitch applies to corners too. So, like I said, Fran Brown did a great job. Congrats to him. But Georgia's secondary recruiting is going to be just fine.
Real quick, Jamil Adai goes to Miami. Won recruiter of the year somewhere. Maybe his rivals. I don't remember. Pretty big. Georgia still has an outstanding recruiting class. Not to take anything away from those guys, but you're right. They want to come play for Kirby. When you point to Eric Stokes, say, look, this is what I can do. And you point to just, the Richard LeCounts of the world, Chris Smith. It's like, hey, we got an undersized guy. He's going to get drafted.
On board right now.
Yeah. Javon Jett, 3-star out of Millersville. Come on. It's like, come on. Kamari Lasser being a shutdown guy. People talking first round stuff for him. Malachi Starks. It's like, look, we can identify him. If we can take a Malachi Starks and play him, the first game of the season as a true freshman, you could be the next guy. We believe we're giving you an offer. We're offering you. So that's pretty big. I don't know what Ron Pollock's talking about. It's a lot of curse words in there. So we'll move on from there. Shout out to the dog father. I'm glad he could get off his live for 2 seconds and actually come join us. He's always busy over there on TikTok. And, of course, our buddy, A Damn Beast Media, who's now a member of the UGA Sports Club. I like having him. And a real quick question from Keith Simmons. Do you think Georgia will go after the former LSU DB coach, Corey Raymond? No.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah. I don't want to speak for Kirby, but I just know that was – look, the last time when Jamil Adai left, we had Doug Belt on, ready – we were all over who was going to get hired. And we talked about Corey Raymond, Doug Belt, T-Rob, Travis Robinson. I mean, we went through the whole thing. And I thought it was probably going to be Doug Belt or Fran Brown. And, Fran Brown got it. So the Belt he was the DC at Houston. Well, the Houston head coach has been fired, Holgerson. So and I'm sure Doug has a ton of suitors, but I could see him come to Georgia too, because he was in the running. So who knows? All right. You went to see DeMello Jones. Talk about what a great athlete he is. Let's talk about some of the other guys we've been to see recently, because I can finally join this conversation. I'm excited. I went to see a couple guys. So y'all let me. I will let you guys go first, and then I will trump you with a 5-star that I saw. So you go ahead.
Yeah. So I was at the Buford Grayson game on a Friday night. Grayson won 19-14, I think. A huge upset took down Buford, and obviously Buford is headlined by Dylan Raiola. Not his greatest night. He got sacked, I think, 6 times. He had a fumble where he tried to scramble. I don't know if he was past the line of scrimmage or not. Hit and fumbled. It just wasn't a great night for the Buford offense. And, we think back to those early parts of the year where St. Francis played Buford and got after that offensive line. That school, Mallard Creek, maybe in North Carolina, got after that offensive line. And it was more of the same. I mean, Grayson just didn't have – it was twofold. Raiola didn't have a ton of time to throw, and there were also those moments like we've seen throughout the year where he maybe holds the ball a little too long. And it all added up to a pretty rough night for Buford on offense. And Grayson, Tyler Atkinson, this 2026 guy is – I'm telling y'all, he's a name to know. I mean, he's, I want to say, top 10, top 15 player in the country. In our first 26 rankings, he had a sack the other night, and he is just, you talk about quick twitch, explosive, every cliche you can think of, it's him. It's going to be interesting to see how he develops over the next year or two, because right now he's like 6'4", but he's also like 210 pounds. So he's really not like edge rusher size right now, but he's also got 2 years before he signs anywhere. So I think if he gets up to that, even like 220, 225. He's so fast and athletic. He's going to be a nightmare to deal with off the edge.
I think Grayson actually, when I went and saw him play early this season, they played Lowndes County. He was playing a lot at outside linebacker. I think I've talked to a coach from Grayson that I'm friends with, and they've more moved him to the inside. And yeah, he has that quick twitch. It's like he's shooting into a bull in a china shop into some of these offensive linemen. And I mean, he just goes right past him right after the quarterback.
That's
and the thing is, he's so athletic, like you said, Lance. Like if he stays at 205, 210, like he's got the athleticism to probably play inside. Like it's so interesting because, he's like, I don't think tweener is the right word yet. I just think he's a guy that could be really good at either spot. It's just going to be a matter of how he grows and develops. Because again, he's young. He's a sophomore. He's 15, 16 years old. So he's got a lot of time left, but definitely I like this one here. He's dropping in coverage and driving and breaking up his pass. Like that's freaky stuff for a guy who, again, could end up being an edge rusher maybe in college. So definitely a guy that catches your eye and a big win for Grayson, who is playing. I can't get these brackets right in my head. Grayson plays
it's not
Milton, I think. Grayson hosts Milton, and Camden County plays at Walton Friday night in the 7A semifinals in Georgia.
Oh man, I could watch that all day. It's a good kid. So where's he going? I see the fans got in there say he's going to Tennessee because they anytime there's a Grayson kid, a lot of fans
jump in wherever he wants. I know he's at Georgia a lot. He's been to Georgia a bunch of times. I mean, Tennessee, I know, has hosted him. Obviously, as the thing says, but it's so early. Like, I think this next year is going to be one where because he's gotten so many offers. I mean, how many offers has he got there, Roddy? Probably 30 something, 40 something. So
33.
Yeah. So he's
and we're probably not updated. Let's be honest. I'm sure he's gotten more since then.
So I think this next calendar year between spring visits, summer visits, figuring out which game days he wants to go to next fall, are really going to sort of paint a picture of who's really in it. Mm-hmm. That said, I think Georgia is going to be one of those schools that's really in it until the end. He's been to Athens, I mean, probably 6-7 times already as a sophomore. Like he lives there pretty much. So Georgia's going to be in it till the end, but it's going to be a dogfight with some of those other powers on there.
And I believe also when I wrote the story and talked to him back in, it's got to be September, Georgia was, I think, one of his first offers, if not his first offer. If they weren't, it was one of the first two. I know that for a fact. So, I mean, they've been on him for a long time as well. When I talked to him, he said that he didn't mention, Fran Brown. He mentioned Will Muschamp, being, as a coach that would talk to him a lot when he would come and visit up here in Athens.
All right. We'll move on from him. Who else have you seen lately? Because, I mean, that kid's going to be a superstar. We got him as a 4-star, but we have him as the number 7 player in the nation.
Yeah, I was going to say,
they're doing 2026.
No, or there might be like 3 5-stars for 26 right now, but these are literally the first edition for those rankings. So he's going to be a 5-star by the time this thing gets done.
I do want to point that out. I mean, the guy that I learned my lesson on was Ben Cleveland, because when we saw him as a sophomore, we're like, this guy looks like an NFL pro. And I'm not using hyperbole. We were in the Ravens stadium. He walked in. People thought he was a Raven. They're like, oh, look, they're warming up here. Like, no, that's a sophomore kid out of Georgia. And we had him like the number 2 kid in the nation, 5-star. Well, he got bigger, got a little stiffer. And, I mean, he's drafted. He's playing. He's in the NFL. But for us, a 5-star guy is a first-round draft pick. And it's tough to say any 10th grader is a first-round draft pick. Yeah. And even – I don't care who you look at. It's tough to say that kid's going to be that way. So to me, if you got the number 7 ranking in the nation, good on you, my man. That's pretty badass. So, but 4-star is not an insult. To me, more important is to look at that number right there. It says 7 right in the middle. And he's 45 minutes from Athens.
Yep.
Not that matters with some of the Buford kids, but yeah. So you saw the 5-star number 1 kid overall, Dylan Rayla. You think Dylan Rayla is going to fall in the final draft, final rankings?
I definitely think he could. I mean, I wouldn't throw my hand on the table and say you should. I will say, because I don't think the majority of fans think this, but I feel like a lot of people say, "Oh, well, he's a 5-star freshman. There's a pretty decent chance he comes in and starts next year, especially if Carson Beck goes to the NFL." And I think, what you just said, Roddy, 5-star means first-round NFL draft pick. It doesn't necessarily mean 5-star come blow up college, from day one. And I think with Dylan Raiola, his ceiling is incredibly high. I do think, mechanically he's got some things to not necessarily clean up really, but just continue to develop. Again, the ceiling is crazy high. It's just, he's going to need, he's not raw. He's obviously very good. He's played at Buford. He's gone to Elite 11 and, Manning camps and whatever, but I just think he's going to need some time in a college system to continue developing, continue working on those fundamentals, which is normal for a kid coming out of high school, right? So, to answer your question, I think he could fall in the final rankings. Julian Sayin in California, the Alabama commit, has had a fantastic year. DJ Lagway in Texas is having a ridiculous year. I see his highlights on Twitter like every Friday night, Saturday morning. So there's a lot of guys out there having great years. But I do think whether he ends up number 1 in the final rankings, number 3, number 10, whatever, I don't think that changes the fact that he could be just phenomenal down the line. I don't think he's going to come in and I don't think he is going to come in and start from day one, which no freshman should be expected to, right, from the first day they walk on campus.
Unless your name is Jake Fromm. Still feel bad he had to go through that. But hey, he almost opened a national title, so that's pretty cool. I'm with you there. We see Chris Garner says, I doubt Kirby started a true freshman at quarterback. Here's the thing, though. If he's the best one, Kirby can say,
that's the thing. That's not to say, like you said.
You don't want to be in that position. You want to hand it to Brock Vandegrift, who's been in your system for 3 years. You want to hand it to Gunnar Stockton. Hey, you've been here 2 years. This is the offense we run. But if you got somebody comes in who's better than those guys, yeah, they'll play. So it's not about seniority. I know a lot of people think it is, but I'm like, good question here about the over-under on the defensive lineman to UGA in the portal. Started 3. Yeah, Georgia's going to be looking in the portal for a lot of people, and Georgia's going to have a lot of guys transfer out. There's no way Georgia keeps all these guys. We've already seen Dara Smith in the portal. You can't. Kirby won't promise them playing time. Am I wrong?
Nope.
No.
So you don't promise them playing time.
Promise the chance to compete and practice every day and earn it.
Right. And so you came to Georgia, you didn't earn it. You didn't win it this year. You're going to be bigger, faster, stronger next year, but they're also bringing in bigger, faster, stronger guys, some in the portal, some not. Again, the reason we were late, I just put a note on the board about Trevor Etienne. He might be going into the portal from Florida, the running back, the sophomore running back. Could he wind up at Georgia? And people are like, no, there's no way. Georgia's got 3 recruits, 3 running back commits coming in. But if he wants to come to Georgia and he does put his name in there, I could see Georgia talking to him. And Georgia had how many wide receiver commits did they have last year? 4 or 5?
Let's see, Tyler Williams, Zeke Haynes.
Yeah, they lost one at the end there.
Anthony Evans.
Yeah, at least 3.
Yeah.
And what did Georgia do? They brought in 2 wide receiver commits.
Yeah.
Commits, 2 transfers. So, it comes down to, we're going to put the best players on there. We're not here to spare your feelings. And there are going to be a lot of guys, who spent the year at Georgia and be like, I'm going to go in the portal, play somewhere else. So, but by the same time, that opens up spots. So what happens? Kirby's going to fill them. So, and you definitely have to have some defensive linemen come in. I'm thinking about Georgia facing Michigan right now when they put on, that they go heavy left. We got Chris Hayes on here, former coach who does some great video clips. I'd love to see Chris break down Georgia facing that Michigan offensive line when they have, there's unbalanced and then there's 17 guys to the left of the center, and that would be fun stuff to see. But you're going to need defensive linemen, and I can see a bunch of them coming in the portal. And the portal's about to get really, really sideways. I tell people, if you got a mouthpiece, put it in because it's going to get nuts. So, yeah, and that means Jed May and Lance McConkey are going to be busting their asses.
Georgia receiving legend Lance McConkey.
Yeah. Who I don't know if he's going to play this weekend. We'll have to that's going to be interesting. But I think Rara might, and I've been saying all week he's not going to. So That's gonna be very interesting. Who else did you guys go see?
I went
Anybody
and
else?
I went and saw 2 weeks ago, the night that you went. I'm not going to spoil that name, that you went up to Raven Gap. I went to a local high school game around Athens to cover a team that I cover for my newspaper, and Morgan County was playing Savannah Christian. So I got to see the nation's #1 prospect in the class of 2025. Elijah Griffin. I was going to say David Sanders, Elijah Griffin, and also
Andy Griffin would have been my way.
and also the Damian Guyton, who's a 2027 kid. When I walked into the stadium, I'm talking to some of the Morgan County people, and I look up, and I don't even have to look up what number Elijah Griffin was. I mean, he was absolutely insane. Him and LaDamian Guyton were actually going up against each other in warmups, and he's just he's a freak. He's fast off the ball.
Look at that monster.
Yeah.
God,
I would hate to be that quarterback, and the quarterback drops the ball.
Tackle him again. Get the pummel.
Yeah.
Oh, that's playing with your food. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, lads.
No, I'm sitting here watching the highlights too. I mean, let's see what he does here. I know if you're listening, I mean,
Bull
just
rush, sack.
he just bull rush. I mean, just bull rushed and got after the quarterback right there. Morgan County did a good job of kind of scheming him up and, kind of taking him out of the game. But that allowed freshman LaDamian Guyton to who's probably going to be one of the top players, I would imagine, in the class of 2027. Mm-hmm. And he's kind of tall and slim right now. He looks more of an outside linebacker type than an interior defensive lineman. But I mean, that kid was feasting too. I know Jed saw both those guys play earlier this season against Beach out of Savannah as well.
Yeah, I mean, LaDamian Guyton is a stud, and Georgia was, as they were with Elijah Griffin, Georgia was his first offer, which, I mean, you camp in Athens as a rising freshman and get offered by the national champions. That is that's how you gain some street cred on your first day of high school, is having an offer from Georgia on your resume. So, I mean, I don't know how anybody, when you've got one guy on the inside, one guy on the outside, I don't know how you block Savannah Christian up front. So, yeah, Guyton is a stud. He is
freshman, though. I mean,
every bit of 5-star potential down the line. So, yeah, and Roddy, finally spill the news and tell everybody who you went to see a couple weeks ago.
I'm so excited because I was kind of blown away with this kid. I want to go see David Sanders Jr. Okay, #2 player in the nation for next year, #1 in the state of North Carolina, out of Charlotte. I know you guys have seen him before, but they were going for their third state title in a row, and they won it. And they were trailing most of the game. They played at Raven Gap. Raven Gap hosted them. Raven Gap had beaten them earlier, but David Sanders, again, you just like you were talking about with Griffin, you walk out and you're like, you don't have to ask for a number. You don't have to look for when the guys warm up, there's always one guy on the side who's getting his hamstring stretched because he can't go through the normal warm-ups like anybody else because he's a superstar. David was an absolute monster, and he played every snap except the kickoffs. So he played defensive end every snap on defense. Then he played tackle, every snap on offense, and he won the game. And that's not to take away from the other 21 guys out there, but they were trailing. So Providence Day was trailing most of the game. They just didn't have an answer for Raven Gap. And then at one point they stopped them. They stopped Raven Gap finally, and then they turned the ball over. Like, okay, well, there goes your playoff chances. And all of a sudden, David Sanders goes through and just hits a guy, gets to the quarterback, and on I guess it's a 5-step drop, and the ball gets free, and one of his teammates grabs it. They get a safety. So, okay. Now, what was more important than getting the safety was the fact that, Raven Gap had to kick off to Providence Day, and they got the ball back. Mm-hmm. And then they just had this death drive running, just running behind him, just, hey, let's run off his right hip. Let's run off his left hip. And they punched it in the end zone with not enough time left. So, and of course, he played most of the season with a torn labrum. And after he got the safety, he's laying on the ground holding his shoulder, just in hell. He's in agony, but it took him forever to announce there was a safety. And once they did, he's laying on the ground and he kind of holds his thumb up like, yeah. It's just, and so we got a good interview with him. We'll have the story here in a bit, but I asked him, let's talk about your recruitment. He goes, yeah, I just won a third title, is all the cheering and stuff. He says, I can't wait to call Kirby Smart and tell him, look, I won my third. Now you have to win your third. He's laying down the gauntlet that Kirby Smart has to win a third title. So he raved about Georgia. Here's the thing. He raved about a lot of schools. He's actually he went to see the Georgia-Tennessee game. But that is a kid who is very fun to watch. And if he winds up at Georgia, I know he's going to come in as offensive tackle. Stacy Searles is going to fight like hell to keep him, but I could see Trey Scott just trying to sneak him in there.
Yeah, that's
he's
what
already said. Stacy Searles won't even let me go into the defensive lineman meeting room. He won't even let me talk to those guys. I'm like, well, of course he's not. So he could play either way. And I don't say that just because he's a big offensive lineman, at a Providence Day. I'm just saying I've been doing this a long time. And when you see a star like that, I said the same thing about Derrick Henry. I was asked on a show last night, who's the most impressive high school talent you've ever seen? I'm like, Derrick Henry. And to this day, I will tell you that Derrick Henry could have been the best running back I've ever seen and maybe the best defensive end I've ever seen. Unstoppable. So David Sanders would be in that same class. Just could be the best offensive tackle, could be one of the best defensive tackles, depending on what side he wants to line up on. So more interesting, though, or not more interesting, but also I wanted to see another kid, James Tank Carrington, who was at Raven Gap School. He will probably be at IMG next year.
Why do they call him Tank, Ruddy?
I don't know. Why do they call him Tank? I didn't interview him after the game. He was sad. He made a beeline for the locker room.
They call him Tank because he's 6'3" and 267 pounds and chiseled out of freaking granite. Because he came to I can't remember which game it was. We came to a Georgia game earlier this year, maybe the South Carolina game.
I think it was
because he had Lance. You had just saw him because he started the year at St. Francis at Maryland. He played against Buford.
Yeah, and played well.
Raven Gap, and we're like, okay, like we knew he was gonna be here. And then he's walking down the stairs in this Raven Gap shirt, like probably like an XL. It looked like a guy wearing a medium. Like this kid is just like ripped. I'm like, oh yeah, that's probably the Tank kid. So yeah, I mean, he's what we got listed as a defensive tackle. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if he ends up, as more of that 3-tech defensive lineman type. Because again, like we were talking about with Tyler Atkinson, he's still got 2 years to, fill out, add a couple inches.
He's got 2 years to reach that 6'3" that we got him listed as too.
Yeah.
6'3".
Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, he could end up as like a 5-tech defensive end, like a Michael Williams. Like there's a lot of ways this could go. But, as far as, first guy off the bus, whatever, James Carrington is right there at the top of the list as far as 2026 guys I've seen.
I would enjoy covering James Carrington at the University of Georgia, mainly for one thing. He lined up over a guard, just ran the kid over. I mean, it was like, heads up. No inside shoulder, no outside shoulder, helmet to helmet, and just ran the kid over. I think the kid has a cleat mark still in his chest. Just pushed him back. The kid was underneath him. Guard did his job. It's like, okay, I'm stuck him. Got his hands in tight, and he just ran right through him like he wasn't even there. And it was just amazing to watch the guy's body lean for the guard go this way and then up and then backwards and then land on the ground. And they just ran away from him because if you went to his side, it's like he's there. So they couldn't keep him out of the backfield. So pound for pound, James Tank Carrington is probably the strongest kid I've seen in a few years. Just an absolute monster. So they call him Tank the way he's built. I call him Tank because he's going to run over whatever's in front of him. Literally like a Sherman tank, like a Panzer, just going over a Jeepster, just killing it. So fun to watch him. I did not get an interview with him. They just lost the state championship. I think the furthest Raven Gap had been in a while. So he ducked out of there pretty fast, and all of his teammates were sobbing. I hate covering playoff football. You see some of the greatest football ever, but from a media standpoint, you're all going to get to talk to one side or the other. So.
Yep, and that was the thing at the Buford game the other night. It ended, and Dylan Raiola was gone, and Jaden Perlotti. Jaden Perlotti was in tears. At that outside the huddle there. So it's like, well, you're not gonna. I've always approached it as unless I absolutely have to talk to this kid about if he's, flipping or whatever. Like I just
Yeah.
you let, because I mean especially for a like for a Dylan Raiola, you don't play high school football again. At KJ Bolden, you're not. That's it for your high school football career. So, yeah, you that's you don't want to do that unless there's absolutely just no way. There's no way around it.
Yeah. What I would always do is go talk to him. Give my commiseration. Hey, sorry you lost. I won't interview you today. Let me call you in a couple of days.
Exactly.
So I see that you made the effort to come see them. They're like, okay. And then they remember, following Wednesday, following Thursday. Oh yeah. Lance drove 2.5 hours to see me. Jed came out of his way to see me. I'm glad he didn't bug me right after the game that, we lost. It's my last high school game or whatever to at least this season to tell me, what's the latest between Tennessee, Florida, and Alabama and Georgia. So
Yeah.
you got to be considerate of where your guys are. All right. We missed some time with the Thanksgiving break. Georgia missed out on Cam McKell on Thanksgiving Day. So as we've been doing for the last 2 months or so, it seems like we've been saying who's left in this class, and that list keeps getting shorter and shorter and shorter. All right, so we'll finish this up unless people have questions in the comment section. Who's left? I mean, you said it yourself, December 20th. That's 3 weeks from tomorrow. Who's left in this class?
Well, other than holding on to the guys in the class like DeMello Jones and guys like that, you have Marcellus Barnes, defensive back from McCallie in Chattanooga. I'm actually going to see him play in the state championship on Thursday against the Baylor school, also from Chattanooga, which is huge rivalry, 2 state powerhouses, whatever. That's going to be, I cannot emphasize enough how excited I am for that. At receiver, there's Terrell Anderson from Grimsley, who, and Lance, you reported on this well, like Georgia had been recruiting Cam McKell as a defensive back for a while, and then like, well, let's give this athlete thing a chance. We'll give you a shot to play receiver because that's what he'd been wanting to play, and obviously he chose Colorado. But Terrell Anderson is a guy who Georgia is involved with, is recruiting. He took an official visit for the Missouri game, I think. So he's one to watch. Brian Taylor, JUCO defensive end, is still he's taking visits. He's visiting Florida either this weekend or next, and then he's committing after that. And he visited Georgia for the Ole Miss game and was very, very high on Georgia after he left. And like you said, everybody, they're going to need defensive linemen. Brian Taylor would go a long way, especially not to say he's plug and play, but I've said it a few times. You get a JUCO guy who's 19 or 20 versus a high school kid who's 17, 18. There's something to be said for that when you're plugging those guys into the trenches. So Georgia's looking to close on Brian Taylor. I mean, there's and like you said, Roddy, there's not a ton left. I mean, you think and feel there's going to be some Kirby Smart like smoke out of nowhere as we lead up to signing day. Next week, I think is really interesting because guys could get onto campus next week and kind of sneak on. If you're a committed guy elsewhere, you're not going to have people taking your picture at a game or anything. So it's going to be interesting to see who, if anyone, shows up in Athens next week. But other than that, yeah, it's really down to a few guys, and then portal. Monitoring who goes into the portal. Who
that's where I'm seeing this
from a Georgia perspective, communicating with the players on the roster to see who is thinking about going in, so what you can take. Like there's a lot of, I don't know how. I honest to God don't know how coaches do it this time of the year if you're a Kirby Smart, because you're preparing for essentially a quarterfinal game on Saturday. You've got guys going into the portal from all schools except like 7 in the country. You've got, your high school recruiting. You're trying to like it's an unreal, everything flying around for coaches right now. So there's a few high school guys. And then keeping an eye on who's going into the portal and who Georgia could potentially get.
Sounds good. Let's hit some of the questions we have from our readers at UGA Sports. Let me add this to the screen here. From the Vault, which is our message board at UGA Sports, which is focused strictly on recruiting. We have the Dog Vent, which of course has all the every possible topic on it, and then we have the vent has every possible topic. The vault has just recruiting. So for you new people who signed up for the Black Friday deal that they had, where you get UGA Sports for $25 for your first year, you're trying to find your way around the website, check out the vault. That's the recruiting only message board. That's all we talk about there. Kudzu Hill, which is where we talk about Georgia baseball, and then you have the Hoops board, which is just about Georgia basketball. We have the chat, which is a crazy place full of politics and whatever you want to talk about over there. Pretty much anything goes on the chat. Wear your helmet if you go to the chat. But Dogvin is where we talk Georgia football and some off-topic stuff. But the vault, that's where we have it. So the first question on the vault comes from our friend Blackshear UGA. It says, will UGA get more or less than 3 portal additions?
I'll say at least 3. Yeah. Like I think just because there's several positions they could look to add, like you mentioned already, they could add a running back. They could add a receiver. They could bring in multiple defensive linemen. So, and then, do you bring in I don't think you need one necessarily, but do you bring in a corner? Do you bring in a safety? So, I'll say at least 3. I'll go there. I think it might be exactly 3. We might push on this thing. But I'll say 3.
Lance?
I would agree. Obviously, the news, with the ETN kid out of Florida was new to me before, we started this show. But I mean, Georgia's looking to add, on that defensive line, maybe a receiver if Ladd McConkey ends up, moving on to the NFL. I think that would put you at 3. But there are multiple positions, like Jed said, that that are going to be with need, because I mean, there's going to be a lot of names in the portal, I think, from Georgia in the next few weeks. Maybe an offensive tackle too.
Yeah, I mean, because again, some of it depends on what ends up leaving from your program that you look to replace. You try to add depth. I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces. Good gift there, Roddy. I know you're a big gift guy, so and it's Star Wars,
more.
So I appreciate that.
Yeah, more. I'm gonna go Blackshear, and I'm not to say that they get 6 or 10, something like that, but I could see 4. 4 or 5. Okay. Next question from R Hall 55 says, do you think UGA signs more than one junior college defensive lineman?
More than one? No. I do think there's a good shot they get Brian Taylor from junior college, but I don't think there were some names out there. There was Jerome Simmons. There was the Hamlin, Jamar, not DeMar Hamlin, like I messed up one time. Jamar Hamlin.
Jaden Hamlin.
Jamar Hamlin is Jaden Hamlin. I messed it up again. Point is, Georgia was looking at those guys as more of like the 3-tech role on defense, and Nasir Johnson from Dublin kind of filled that role. So I think that spot's taken. So you look at Brian Taylor as more of the 5-tech defensive end, and then you're good to go. So I think there's a good shot they get Taylor, but more than one, no. I think it'll if they get any, it'll be Taylor and call it a day.
Okay. I'm on the same boat with you. Yeah. Other than I was gonna say that Hamlin kid, early on it seemed great, but after Nasir Johnson committed right after that, after the Ole Miss game, kind of like in the middle of the day 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, it was like the middle of the day on Monday or Tuesday. Yeah.
Yeah. And I had heard that he was going to try to commit like the night before, but they didn't have any they didn't have any service in Dublin at his house or something like that. I don't know how true that was, but someone sent me that text. And I mean, South Georgia. I mean, Jed, you went out to Schley County. They didn't have any service down there.
Listen, if you go to a Swainsboro game and try to tweet out highlights, it's a failed effort. Schley County is the same way. Although, in fairness, there was hardly any service to tweet at Grayson the other night. So,
yeah.
In fairness to them, it's more of a you get a few thousand people on the same trying to suck up the same 5G. It oftentimes doesn't work out very good.
I remember going to see Leonard Floyd and trying to tweet out stuff, and it wouldn't work. And then it would send it, and then I try to resend it. It's like, you already sent this message. And I remember pulling into a 24-hour McDonald's, and it's the first time I ever got on McDonald's Wi-Fi just to send stuff to ESPN. I'm like, this kid's really good. Here's our interview, and it just crawling. The interview, the the video crawling up to them. I was like, God, this is going to take forever. Yeah, it is pretty bad. All right. PA Dog 610 says, talking about Michael says, do you think you can flip him back to Georgia? Seems as though Colorado is falling apart after the offensive coordinator resigned.
Well, they had 2 quarterback commits. Antoine Hill, the kid from I think it's Houston County, decommitted in the 2025 class, and then they just had a 2024 kid decommit like the next day. So, but I don't think that I think that Michael's probably pretty locked in. I don't think that 2 decommits in 2 days is going to change Michael when he literally called Dion on his Instagram live during the commitment.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing for and Trent mentioned this, I think the night before Michael's commitment, Colorado threw that whole Travis Hunter model out there, and OC or not, like that's a Deion Sanders pitch and everything. So I don't think so. I mean, I don't.
That's fine.
I'll say what could get interesting is if I know it's been kind of speculated that I don't think he's signing till February, Lance. Is that right? So
yeah, that's what he told me at least.
So I mean, if you're Georgia and you have a semi unexpected portal departure like an AD Mitchell last year, for example, maybe you try to make something happen late. But I don't think that happens. I think he ends up in Colorado.
All right, let's do these a little bit quicker. Let's try DeFranklin 31 says, how confident are you all in Nitro truly signing with Georgia?
I think Georgia's weathered the storm from what it was a few weeks ago, or more than a few weeks, a couple months. I wouldn't bet my life on it. But I mean, he visited 2 weekends in a row for Ole Miss and Missouri. So I think everything looks pretty good with Georgia there.
Okay. What are UJ's chances of signing a safety, or is that the plan for DeMello Jones?
So DeMello played safety at Waynesboro until this year, and he's playing more corner. So I think he could play safety. He has told us, he's told me, and he's told Lance that Georgia's talking to him about corner right now. But he very easily could end up at safety once he gets on campus. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if he ends up there at all.
Okay. What are you hearing in regard to the portal? Who's coming? Who's leaving? How does this impact our quarterback room? Right now, we don't know anything about the quarterback room because no one has mentioned that they are leaving. The biggest decision will come down to Carson Beck. Does he go pro or not? If he does, then I don't see anybody leaving. Why? If you're Brock Vandegrift, why would you? Now that Carson's left, why would you leave?
At least for the spring, for sure. But I mean, the tough thing is if you're a quarterback and you're going to transfer, you're like, okay, I want to go to my new school and have a spring and a summer so I can be starting. So if you get there in the summer, like that makes it pretty tough on yourself to be starting by the fall.
Yeah.
So
Damn near impossible. But again, it's like you've been in the system. Now you got to go somewhere else and learn it, and your number one competition's gone. I just don't see that happening. Now, if Carson Beck does come back, I could definitely see a couple guys, at least one guy transferring. Real quick, based on UGA employees, describe in detail who's the most impressive recruit you've seen at a game. I already mentioned to me it was Henry.
Let's see. Yeah, I mean, DeMello Jones is really good. When I went earlier this year, he threw a couple touchdowns, ran for one, had a few big hits from corner. David Hobbs is a kid who went to Tennessee, or is committed to Tennessee as a defensive lineman. No, went to Tennessee. He was a 23 kid. Very like game record type as a defensive lineman. I mean, Jacoby White never fails to give you some
Jacoby White show, baby. Yes.
I mean, literally has never failed to I can like so easily picture when he gets to Georgia, the grainy like practice video that gets leaked of George Pickens making a one-handed like behind the back catch. Like I'm so sure we're gonna see one of those as Jacoby White at some point. Like, hey, man, look at what this Georgia freshman did in practice, and you're like, who is this kid? Like he does that stuff in games all the time. But those guys for sure.
All right, Lance, you got a most impressive recruit you've seen at the game?
Well, I mean, like I said, I raved about DeMello Jones earlier, but like I said earlier this year, Tyler Atkinson really impressed me with his speed and his just athleticism. Grayson.
Okay. No, that's easy. Let's get to Joko Trojan Dog. Says, will the departure of Fran Brown affect any of our recruits? We've mentioned we started the show off with that, so hopefully that was answered in detail. He says, is wide receiver and defensive line the only two positions that UGA will seek portal help? And I don't think so, because, again, we started off the show. The reason we're a little late today is because I was running down a note on Trevor Etienne, the Florida running back. Our Jason Higdon, who runs our Florida site, says that he was meeting with Billy Napier, and from everything that Jason heard was that Etienne was going to put his name in the transfer portal. Now, of course, Florida's going to try to talk him out of it. And then when he asked, Jason said, I could see him going to Athens. I could see him going to LSU. And the first thought was, well, why would he come to Athens? I mean, Georgia's got 3 running backs committed in this class. You're going to have some healthy guys, Branson Robinson and Roderick Robinson, and Andrew Paul. So you're going to have 6 scholarship running backs. Why would he come and be the 7th or something like that? And so the first thought is, that won't happen. But here's the thing. Kirby has no compunction about bringing in somebody who's good. So if, he can improve his roster, he will. So in other words, I don't think those are the only 2 positions. If he can find a great center, great offensive lineman, a great tight end, there's no position that Kirby won't add somebody if there is a somebody out there who's he thinks more talented, that would fit the culture of his team. He'll bring him in. So, Andy Stowe says, do you think the Dogs will get back in on Antoine Hill now that he's decommitted from Colorado? That's an interesting question from Andy.
I don't right now I doubt it, only because Georgia hadn't seriously been involved in his recruitment for a while, even before he committed to Colorado. Like, I've interviewed him a lot, and every time I talked to him, I was like, yeah, I talk to Georgia a lot. Yeah, sometimes. Every now and then, yeah, I haven't really talked to him at all. So, never say never. I mean, the thing, and Trent has mentioned this a lot, it's not even a certainty that Georgia ends up taking a 25 quarterback at the moment. So, we talked about this with Ryan Montgomery, too. Like, it's kind of up in the air whether Georgia takes one. So, I don't think so. I know when he spoke with Adam Gorney or whoever it was the other day after he decommitted, Georgia wasn't really among the schools he mentioned. So I don't think so. But again, it's an in-state guy. He's got the connections being Trey Hill's nephew. So certainly wouldn't 100,000,000% rule it out. But right now, I don't think so.
Very fair. Check and see if there's any other questions in the comments section. Here's one for you guys, kind of more of a team thing. Do you think Beck should come back?
So, so it's 2 things. One, let's just, for the sake of argument, say he continues playing well, leads Georgia to a national championship. One, it's hard to imagine your stock would be higher than it would be at that moment. 2, you look at next year, Georgia's replacing a center, a guard, a right tackle, another 4 offensive linemen probably.
4 offensive linemen.
You're losing your top 2 running backs. You're losing Brock Bowers. You're losing
Ladd McConkey.
Few receivers. Yeah. So it's going to be a lot to replace. So if I was Carson Beck, you would evaluate it and say, okay, do I
deuces?
I don't know. I just think a lot of things would add up to where it might benefit him more to go pro this year.
Well, this is why I wrote in my column a couple weeks ago, the NFL needs him. Mm-hmm. This year's quarterback class is loaded. Okay, absolutely loaded.
You got
Penix,
Caleb Williams, Drake May, Bo Nix, like you mentioned, Michael Penix.
Just with the names that everyone knows ahead of time, he's 6th or 7th. Now, he's better than some of those guys. Okay. If you look at what's going on in the NFL, there are guys starting at the quarterback spots I've never heard of. Like, who the hell is that? And I was so excited. My buddy Josh Dobbs got to start. I'm like, hell yeah! So some of the journeymen out there, guys who've been in the league for a while, are getting playing time. You bring a guy who has a 72% completion rate. Who can make those throws. You've seen him thread some needles. Who's smart. Biggest thing about being in the NFL is you either got to be multi-talented, be a threat, or you got to be incredibly smart. And this guy's got a high football IQ. He'll fit right in. So I'm like, yeah, even though it is loaded, I could see him going. So do I think he should go? he's got to make that decision. But I think he's ready to. Fred Farah, that's a guy. Y'all don't understand. Y'all wouldn't know Fred's lineage, but that's a Bulldog through and through right there for you. Does 84 get COVID eligibility? I think they all do. So
Yeah,
I don't.
Yeah, because he came in 2020.
I don't think he has to leave, if that's the question. And I don't think Ladd 100% has to go.
No, but he won. He could have gone last year.
Yeah.
Didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, he came back. I think it's been pretty big. Fred says, I thought George was looking at the guy Florida fired to be the DB coach replacement. Come on, man. They're going to take a guy that Florida fires. No, it's Corey Raymond, and I just don't see that happening. He did not have a great interview when he interviewed with Kirby the first time. Good recruiter, though. And I thought this was from a damn B says the NFL wants processors quarterback. Beck is that. Yeah, true enough. So, all right. What else? Anything you guys want to talk about before we leave?
No, I mean, just going forward to this weekend, as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to Tennessee State Championships Thursday. Lance will be at Camden County at Walton on Friday, which got 2 Georgia commits playing. Huge 7A semifinal. Don't know where I'm going Friday yet. I'll go somewhere. We might even get Roddy out on the road somewhere.
Screw that.
So, yeah, I mean, playoffs are heating up. It's I'm very excited to, state championships for Georgia in a couple weeks. So, for high school football, it's a great time of year for sure.
I'm proud of you guys. I mean, we had Trent on the road the other day too, so all 3 of you guys were out there, and we even had an intern go down on the road, and we might have 4 or 5 guys on the road this Friday as well. So, in other words, all that we appreciate everybody who joined us on a unusual way. Normally, we have the show on Mondays. We couldn't do it yesterday. I had it interfered with some family stuff, and I was also doing another show with some friends of ours. So I appreciate everybody moving your normal Monday night viewing habits to Tuesday night. We appreciate everybody that's joined us. Means a lot to us. But we should be back at 8:30 next Monday to have our show. We'll have a recap of all the recruits we see. Plus, I'm sure we'll have a hell of a lot to talk about the Georgia-Alabama game, for next Saturday. We're going to have a ton of breakdowns and stuff like that. We moved our normal Tuesday show. Normally at noon, we have a show on with Coach Donna. We moved that to tomorrow because Coach was doing some meeting with some folks who are part of Georgia's NIL thing. Speaking of, if you see the Hunker vodka behind me, when we're doing a recruiting show, I should probably get them to switch from the post-game overreaction show to our recruiting show because it's the proceeds of the Hunker vodka. Some of the proceeds go to the Classic City Collective, which is Georgia's NIL arm. And the NIL arm is going to be incredibly busy with the portal opening up and signing day in 3 weeks. So if you want to support your Bulldogs, go get drunk on Hunker vodka, but drive responsibly. All right, folks, that's all the time we have for this week. We will see you next Monday at 8:30. Take care.